Welcome to Tactical Talk. This is Zain Khan. Today, the topic of our show is: will China and India go to war? And also, the future of Afghanistan. The guest of our show is Athar Javed, the Director General of Pakistan House. He will be giving his analysis on the dangerous situation that is building up. Welcome to our show, Athar Javed. This is Zain Khan. It's a pleasure to have you on Tactical Talk.
Thank you very much.
Athar Javed, let's get to the first question. Is there a danger of an Indian-Chinese conflict?
Okay, all right. I think it's a very good question, Zan. Yes, there are dangers, of course, especially looking at the way India is posturing alongside border with China at Sikkim, but also with Pakistan at the line of control. But at the moment, the way the situation between India and China is evolving, it's we have to say we are very cautiously, I would say, pessimistic on the way the very recent confrontation and the Chinese insistence on Indian troops to withdraw, and of course Chinese have also said to Indians that they should not flirt with the territorial integrity of China. And at the same time, the beef up of troops, almost one source has told us that it's around 500,000 troops actually on that border. So it's, of course, it's a serious situation, but we have to wait and see.
What is the strategic design behind the Indian aggression in the region?
Yes, actually, the strategic design, I would say, of India has been known for decades now. Since the rise of China in the mid-90s, India, of course, was, I would say, collectively supported by the West, and in terms of their outsourcing of jobs and, of course, investing in India. And the most important thing that Indian defense industry actually received a remarkable support in terms of weapons and the most, I would say, most modern weaponry. And only in 2016 there was a report by CIPRI in which they reflected that India is the, one of the largest country who received weapons and modern weaponry and from fighter jets to the missile technology from Israel and from other countries, from United States. So the West basically has supported. But then, of course, one can also raise a question: why India's strategic design match with the overall international security situation at the moment? U.S. needs India in Afghanistan, according to the U.S. defense analyst. Of course, Pakistan disagrees with it, China disagrees with it, because India, of course, has no borders with Afghanistan. On the contrary, if we look from the perspective of China, China says that India and China is improving trade relation, and there is no need for India to sort of get into the offensive posturing or raise stakes and alerts on the borders. And what we have observed also, that there has been a rhetoric coming out of India, that India is basically gearing up to become an international power. And of course, there are 3-4 components for that, Zan. As you know very well, that it is important for the countries which really wants to be international powers or the superpowers. There are parameters. And I'm afraid to say that India does not match not only the parameters, but also has a problem at home from different angles. Rise of different movements within India, and then of course the issue of Kashmir is not leaving India alone. Indian security forces oppressively has conducted for the past almost 2 years, operations against the civilians. So the design, if I combine with the internal situation and internal problems of India with its strategic design, it comes with 2 answers. First answer is that the West seeks India's role in the international regional affairs as a dominant role. The second is They have actually, the Western countries, including the United States, has encouraged India to be forthcoming in terms of their regional cooperation. But it appears that somehow the United States and other major powers have been not been able to convince India that it is better for the region of South Asia, that India, China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, they all should concentrate, focus on their trade and economic relation. And then, as you know, because you in this area, you are very well aware that the Chinese are more in their words that they are more base their economic and strategic interests on the Confucius saying that if their neighbors are prosperous, then they are prosperous. So therefore, they are working towards more economic and sustainable growth of different regional countries, including Pakistan. But it is hard to understand when India really needs, because 700, 600 million people are living under the poverty line, and India needs support of regional countries, especially China, to improve trade relations and sort of establish peace and stability in the region. Despite of all these facts on the ground, that India has insurgencies in their on the mainland, then there is a problem in Kashmir, a very big problem. Civilians being killed there, and then the pellet guns, and then the thousands of people are blinded. With the combination of human rights violation, the security threats within India, rise of BJP, the Hindu fundamentalists, and then at the top, taking quite a harsh stance with China on Sikkim border, it doesn't make any sense. So, to my reckoning, the strategic design has always been for India to contest and compete Chinese dominance and economic dominance in the world and the security. I really cannot see that India will succeed until India resolves, the border issues, the disputes with China and Pakistan, and of course other neighboring countries, also including Nepal for that matter.
Afghan soil once again has become the center of private armies. With Eric Prince proposing a way out to the U.S. forces, how will this affect the role of the U.S. as a superpower?
Yes, Zain, actually, of course, Afghanistan has been a center for great games for hundreds of years. And prior to the United States, the British and the other, and before that, from Alexander the Great to all the way, somehow Afghanistan Afghan soil attracts the foreign invaders. And in the contemporary situation where NATO has been with almost more than 40 countries have been fighting actually against Afghan Taliban, and of course they have miserably failed. And one of the reasons I have plainly said that they have failed, that after 15 years it was difficult for the NATO forces to determine their enemy. First, their enemy has been Al-Qaeda. And when Osama bin Laden was neutralized, terminated, and after Tora Bora in 2001, people were expecting that there would be a start in few years of the reconstruction. But then it went on at really quite a length now, that more than a decade, the United States and NATO members have really unable to resolve the issue between the government, which is installed, of course, can say elected, with the support of the NATO and ISAF, but at the same time, US and NATO members managed to bring India into play. And that doesn't make any sense to most of the international strategists. Most of the military and security experts believe, actually, if you ask them, in private, because of course they hold their positions academically, but they are unable to understand that developed countries, if they have been unable to, rebuild Afghanistan, how India can do it? The reason being that India, using that economic development aid vis-a-vis establish their influence. This is one point. Now, in retaliation, of course, Afghan Taliban basically opposes India's presence there. But the most surprising recent development, which, as you know, Mr. Eric Prince, the former Black Waters, now Frontier, I think, support or Frontier something, this organization, they have changed the name of the organization from Blackwater. The Eric Prince is proposing at the moment really to give an exit to the US and NATO member states and their militaries and try to take over and construct a private army's business. We all know what has happened, what had happened in Iraq and what happened in Syria. Well, if a nation states are involved for 15 years in another country and they wanted to really rebuild and reshape the society, which itself is quite a job. It is not possible to reshape societies within decades, let alone by foreign countries, group of foreign countries. And if you, if you look into the recent developments, the two worrisome changes have been made in U.S. policies. We are not really sure at the moment that whether Mr. Eric Prince will be given permission or his proposal will be approved. We do not know. But the word is out that Mr. Eric Prince has proposed that they will provide reconnaissance and help Afghan Air Force to build and also develop the capacity to operate. My question is actually, if on the one hand you have increasing Indian influence and the development of the non-state actors, all the way bringing ISIS from Syria and Iraq into Afghanistan in order to contest Afghan Taliban, and then on the top you bring private armies or private contractors in Afghan conflict. Well, this will create a huge mess, and I'm sure this mess will be greater than the mess we were in post-Soviet withdrawal. The reason being, during the Soviet withdrawal, there were only 3-4 actors. One was, a consortium of European, led by Americans, including Pakistan, and then the other were the Afghan Taliban, and then the Mujahideen, and then the different factions among Mujahideen. But this time we are looking at the development of, by default or by design, we do not know the non-state actors' role in establishing writ of a state actually, or establishing or preparing or creating an entire nation state. Well, this is not a business actually. This is a very serious issue, which I'm sure the United States and their worthy members of NATO will not allow any private contractors to really smooth the exit process of the US and NATO forces. My suggestion and my intake, and of course analysis of the situation, is that it is entirely the responsibility of US and NATO to stay in Afghanistan and ensure the stability and expel all the ISIS and other foreign militant organizations, also including the TTP, which are really, really sponsored by Indians, abetted by Afghans, and they are attacking in Pakistan. So a combination of problems at the hands of the US. And of course, we are hoping only. Recently, one of the incidents just occurred yesterday evening in Lower Dir, as you know. 5 Pakistani soldiers, including a major, they embraced martyrdom. And it was exactly that the suicide bombers, those who were coming from across the border, they were hiding, and these young officers and the brave officers of Pakistan Army, in their intelligence-based operations, when they went there, they found it that these people are hiding, and they have planned to attack civilians, so they really grapple them. So you can imagine the resolve which Pakistan is showing as a developing country with not much resources. On the other hand, you have NATO members with advanced weaponry and bringing in now a private contractor. I'm sorry to say, or maybe I'm not sorry to say, notoriously. So, but then these are the really dangers, I would say, to the regional peace and stability. That on the one hand, we, as I mentioned in my intro, we have a situation at the Sikkim border between China, India, and then we have a situation within Afghanistan where lots of foreign sponsored and foreign militant organizations are present. That includes especially the ISIS, Daesh we call it. So I think this is a really a worrisome situation in Afghanistan, and it is my hope that the sense will prevail.
Okay, last question. Non-state actors have ripped through Syria, Iraq, and Libya. Do you think Afghanistan is heading towards the same fate?
Yes, I think actually, if we, as I mentioned, in my previous answer, the role of non-state actors has been basically, I would say, is procured now. Procured in a sense, I mean, it's maybe very harsh terms in terms of the military and, strategically, but it's also a fact. We have seen that the nation states were involved in diluting other nation states, other actors, other countries' influence by using non-state actors. And in the case of Iraq, we have seen that in the post-Saddam era, instead of keeping intact the socio-political structure, the decision made by the United States and other allied members to destroy these structures and bring in all those factional sectarian politics in it. And the interplay of these, the sectarian organization and also the militant organization gave way and actually created a path for a factory, I would say, of the non-state actors in Iraq, which led later to, of course, to Libya and then rebounded back in Syria. And the Syrian situation, I would say, is very serious. It's serious because not because the Russian planes are pounding or the French planes or the US planes are pounding on the ground and the Syrian forces are fighting and the Iranians, revolutionary guards are there. It's not because of that only. The situation get more complex when the non-state actors actually became more than the state actors. I mean, they were on the ground and they're fighting and brutally slaughtering innocent civilians. Because the Code of Conduct of War, Zain, as you know, it adheres to the Geneva Conventions. When there is a war, even if it's a civil war or even if the situation, but in case of Syria, Iraq, Libya, and of course Yemen, we saw the conflict, the improvisation which stunned the international experts on the way the non-state actors had an access to modern weaponry, money, vehicles, and so much so forth. So these are the worries which I will say can affect the South Asian stability. Because if you bring that kind of model in Afghanistan, well, Afghanistan is no Iraq. Afghans are known to fight and counter all kind of invaders, whether they have been British for hundreds of years before and before them, and Soviets. So Afghans are not going to take in like this. But the problem is that it's Pakistan and other countries they should worry about. The spillover of that design of the non-state actors' operations, or the way Indian, as I said, the backing of Indians in Afghanistan of these non-state actors can create a serious situation in Pakistan. So I think it is a high time that the US and Afghanistan as well should take responsibility. We say always, of course, I have said it many times during this only interview, that the US and NATO take responsibilities. Sometimes I wonder that why Afghans do not take a responsibility. It is the responsibility of Afghanistan not to allow other states to influence their social system and their system of, relationship with Pakistan and other countries, just because they want their money and they want the resources and they want their armies to be built, and they want their systems to be designed again. This is what we should worry about. So I will say, overall, the situation of using non-state actors in Afghanistan and the modeling Iraqi conflict or Syrian conflict in Afghanistan, just maybe a thinking there in the establishment of US and other countries that they can defeat Taliban would backfire. And that can be detrimental to the regional peace, and the responsibility squarely would be placed on major powers, Afghanistan and India.
Thank you so much, Mohammad Athar Javed, for being on Tactical Talk. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much, Zain.
This was Mohammad Athar Javed. We were discussing the possibilities of a war between India and China, and also the future of Afghanistan. Until the next episode of Tactical Talk, this is Zain Khan. Take care and goodbye.